Alright, the intent of this video recording is to provide you some information on the Action and Media Plan assignment. So this really is pulling across the information that you either learned in your foundation of your MSW degree or as a BSW student. So the information that you learned in Human Behavior and the Social Environment 2, which is theories about groups, communities, and organizations, and the practice classes on groups, and then the practice classes on communities and organizations really come into play here. So this is truly an assignment that pulls across the curriculum and gives you the opportunity to use those skills and knowledge in a new way. So first of all, I have the grade sheet, which you will be able to find under assignments, or actually maybe I'll put the Action and Media Plan grade sheet with the Action and Media Plan. Okay, so this connects directly to your policy action plan that you created as your first group assignment for this course. So you're going to want to identify a specific plan for the first phase of your policy action plan. So I asked you to identify goals and objectives. So this is really putting that into action. So your plan should provide specific strategies for influencing decision makers. So how are you going to move your plan forward? In addition, I'm asking you to identify two different and specific audiences. Now, these can be any audience that you would like, but I do encourage you to make them very specific audiences. Otherwise, it's going to get out of control rather quickly. So the audiences, like I have said, should be different. And so you can identify whatever audiences that can be. It might be an audience that you're trying to convince. It might be mobilizing supporters in order to get them to move forward and act. Maybe you want to get them out to vote or to promote your policy that you want to have passed. It could be people who are on the fence, and you're going to target them on leaning and shifting to support your plan. So each of those should have specific strategies for addressing them, because your intent is going to be different with them. If you're trying to mobilize them, you're going to approach it differently. Or if your group that you pick is one that really doesn't think it's an issue at all, you're going to have to prove to them that it's an issue that is important and that they need to act on. Or if it's a group that's like, yay, yeah, I think that's a great idea, but it's just going to sit in their living room and not do anything with it, then you have to figure out how you're going to get them out and be able to be an active participant instead of someone who's a supporter but is not doing anything. So you can choose that, and it should be specific to your policy action plan that you developed in the first assignment. You can tweak it if you want to create something else that you've suddenly realized is important. That's fine. It doesn't have to specifically relate to your policy action plan, as long as the intent is still there and that you're not completely reinventing the wheel at this point in time. The second piece that you need to do is to develop a set of talking points about the policy or issue, that should say, or issue. The talking points should be clear and specific. And I went out and I found some examples, and they're in the doc sharing. This is from the California School Boards Association, and you can see that the talking points are clear and specific, so that anyone who is going out to promote the project would have a core set of clear messages that they wanted to promote, so that people aren't all over the board. You're sending out a consistent message, and people aren't saying specifically why they're interested, but rather what's the intent of the larger policy and why do you want to move that forward. And so you can see that they have specific things like our students in schools have been making progress. Reading scores are up 25%, and math scores have increased 17% in the last 4 years. Okay, so because this is an academic paper. I will ask that you provide citations for those, but you can see that they didn't provide citations, which I don't think is good practice, but because people want to know where you get your information from. So that's a very nice example of some very clean informational bites of information that people can use when they go out and talk to individuals that they meet on the street, if they're at a booth, maybe at a some sort of fair of some sort, or if you have people campaigning door to door, or somebody gets invited to talk to the media, that the message is clear and consistent. Okay. Let's go back here. Right. Then you need to have one example of an action idea document that is attached to the plan. You need to identify what the intent of the document is and its intended audience. So you might develop this action plan, and it makes sense to me that you would, but you wouldn't have to, that it connects back to one of these two audiences up here. So it has document in parentheses because this can be also a sound bite. So if you had a spot on the radio, that would be acceptable also. You could use that as your document. It could be a letter to the editor, it could be a flyer, it could be a brochure. It really is up to you. There's a wide variety of different forms that it can take. But remember, you do have to identify in the paper what is the intent of the document and who its audience is. So is its intent to persuade individuals? Is its intent to get supporters to go out and take action? Is it to get people off the fence and towards your side of the issue instead of against you? What's its point? What is your plan? What's your intent in doing it? Because all of your actions should have very clear intent, right? So, although nobody likes to talk about money, you do need to develop a realistic budget for Action Media Plan. And you should identify possible sources of funding. So, a realistic budget for the Action Media Plan might be that you've developed a brochure, and maybe someone internal in the organization could develop the brochure, but how much is it going to cost to print it? Is it going to be printed in color? All of those sorts of things. If you're going to have spots on the radio, you can look up a couple different radio stations and see how much they usually charge. Unless maybe you could get the radio to say that it's a public service announcement. So what are the guidelines for that? Does it fit into that criteria? If you're going to take an ad out in the paper, how much does that cost? Do you need office space? Any of those sorts of things, all right? Even travel. So if you're getting a group of people and you're going to have them go to the state legislature, how are you going to do that? What sort of, are people going to volunteer? Is that realistic? What about people who have limited funds available to them? Maybe some people can volunteer, and then maybe there's other resources that would be available for individuals who had limited funding. All of those sorts of aspects. And I'll show you in a few minutes some of the documents that I have under the Action and Media Plan and Doc Sharing have some good information for you to think about that. Okay. Then you need a plan for evaluating and a criteria for assessing the Action and Media Plan. And again, I have a nice document under Action and Media Plan in Doc Sharing that has some information for you. But this is where your research class comes into play, all right? So how are you going to know that you are achieving what you think you're achieving? And like Mike said when he came to our class, and he was talking about the focus groups for middle-aged men who had attempted suicide, and they couldn't get anybody to show up for the focus groups. And so you've got to have an idea of how many are going to be enough. And you can always reevaluate and reconfigure that, but you should have an idea from the get-go about what your intent is and that what is going to be successful. And so you should have that. And like I said, there's a nice layout that I'll show you in just a minute. So your plan and criteria should be clear and they should be measurable. Alright, and then we have the points as in all assignments for individual participation. Okay, so let me show you some of these documents that I'm telling you about. Okay, so they're just right here. Alright, there's the talking points example, and then I have two sections of two different documents. And the first one I'm going to show you is from the family care. Okay, so it's right here. And you can see this first page, it has some nice information about identifying target audiences. And you might also use, I don't know what you all covered in your HIPC 2 classes or your community and organization practice class. If you did the tri-ethnic model out of Colorado, it's a great way of identifying key stakeholders. That's definitely not the only way, but that's one way. Diffusion of innovation talks a little bit about that too, so I'm not sure what theoretical basis you are coming from, but this in and of itself has a nice way of identifying some of those target audiences and activities. So that's one aspect that is nice. And this is a training guide, so it talks about how to set up your training, so you'll have to kind of skim over that and get to the meat of it. And then they do talk about how to deal with opposition. Let's see how fast I can scroll through here. Sorry, gotta scroll through here. Computer's a little slow. So primary and secondary audiences. Let's get through here. Alright. So there's an audience analysis. That would be, that's from the world of sociology. Okay, let me scroll through here, sorry. Okay. So here is a nice sort of worksheet that might be helpful to you. Right? It identifies your objective up here. So what's your intent? Your audience, is it a primary or secondary audience? What do you know about that audience? What are some appropriate activities for that audience? And what are some of the appropriate materials? So is this an audience that is going to maybe not have great reading levels? So you're going to be presenting things verbally or with very simple bullet points, so those sorts of things to consider. Or is it a highbrow audience that is really going to rip apart the information, and so you're really going to have all your facts in order? So this is just a worksheet that might help you identify your two audiences that you want to work with. Not necessary, just something that I'm hopeful will be helpful. Okay, this one has a nice section here about developing advocacy messages. So this is one of those that might be really great for you identifying your document, your advocacy document that you want to get out there. So that's a nice piece. And then again, it has a nice worksheet for you if that's something that works. And then here they have developing an implementation and a monitoring evaluation plan. This is what I wanted to show you that I think might be very helpful to you, if I can get through all this. Okay. Some nice information there. And then here's your budget template. Like I said, this is a chart that might be helpful to you in thinking about it. It doesn't have to be exact, but it might be helpful to you. And here's an implementation plan. Here's your monitoring. Here again is, you could put this in a chart, but maybe to help you spell out all those different factors so you're not missing any pieces. And then here is your activity and that input-output piece, and then means of verification that that's what happened. And then here's a training evaluation, and this is not something what I wanted. You could, one of your outputs, that's why I wanted to remind myself, okay. So if your evaluation plan is that you're going to give a evaluation tool at the end, you can just simply state that. For the intent of this project, I don't expect you to develop an evaluation plan. If this was a 2-semester course and we could drag this out and do this in detail, like it should be done, I would ask you to do that. But for the intent of this, that would just be, you would have an evaluation plan at the end, so you might ask for feedback. And so you would just say that I would form asking for feedback using a Likert scale will be distributed, something along those lines. Okay. And then let me show you the other one. This one is from the policy project. It's actually an older document. It was created in 1999, but it is quite lovely nonetheless. And again, here we have developing an action plan. And this one I like because, look, it has activity, needed resources. Sorry, I don't know how to flip this. I'm sure there's a way, but that's smarter than I am. Responsible persons, and then the time frame. I really like that aspect of this one. And then they have one that's filled out, which I think is really nice. And then they have the monitoring evaluation. And again, because this is a training guide, you get all the information about how to set up the training. So just have to skim through that piece. Okay, I thought it had okay, I must be confusing it with the other one. I thought it had the monitoring evaluation form in there also. It was similar to this one. Okay, so there are some documents that are available to you, but please do remember, you have the knowledge and skills to do this. You just haven't taken those classes for a little bit. They might be stored in your memory a little bit, so make sure to pull them forward, and I know you can do it. All right? Is there anything else I wanted to tell you? Nope, I don't think so. All right. I look forward to seeing your plans.